Hey everyone, so glad you're back with us again today. I am here with Ned and Kelly, who are coaches who work with me in Friends and Couples Care, as you know. And we're back again today for our weekly roundtable discussion. And today our topic is fear of rocking the boat. And this is huge. And the reason, obviously, that we're talking about this is, we bring up topics that are relevant because we see them come up a lot. And I've noticed that when I propose action steps or coaching for couples in crisis, one of the biggest forms of resistance that I notice that comes up around implementing those steps or taking the right actions or communicating in the right ways is this fear of rocking the boat. And you guys, can share your experiences as well. And I think that there are some common threads that we can explore. But essentially, fear of rocking the boat is like, how I define it is really you're wanting to, if you rock the boat, you're moving out of the peace and comfort that you're in. You're choosing to, step out of what feels like normalcy or even harmony. If you're in a place of like total connection and you're feeling really good right now, and there's something on your mind and there's things that you want to bring up, but you just don't want to bring them up because you don't want to disrupt that sense of connection. Or it could just be that you're in like a comfortable distance, right? Where we're not really close right now, but nobody's fighting. And so I just want to kind of keep things as they are. And it's really this idea that raising an issue, this belief that if I raise an issue, even if it's for the sake of clearing the air, or if it's to solve a problem, or if it's to create something positive in the relationship, it feels like danger. It feels like I'm jeopardizing something, and you forget that there's actually a really positive thing or reason for doing that. And especially I've noticed, and you guys can tell me your experiences, and I'm interested in hearing this because I've noticed that this fear is especially strong in couples who have conflict but don't ever really resolve their issues, right? So if they bring something up, they fight about it for a while, they never see eye to eye, and then they just get tired of fighting, and then they shove it under the rug. So nothing was really resolved. And then the fighting is over, and then they're just kind of happy that the fighting is over. And then for sure, then there's even more of an impetus in those situations to not want to bring things up and to just want to prolong the sense of connection that they can have until the next fight, right? But what ends up happening is that, the stuff is still there that you haven't dealt with. So you might be prolonging the time that it takes for that to come back up again. But by the time it does, you're not any more prepared to deal with it. Right. So if there's something that you needed to figure out in order to get unity on co-parenting, for example, if there's something that you needed to clear the air in terms of resentment or anything that requires collaboration, if you haven't done it, then by the time something comes up again, that's a trigger, you're right back at square one, and you have ended up making it worse for yourself. So that's really why we want to talk about this today, right? Is because you're not helping yourself. It's really a short-term choice that is jeopardizing a long-term solution. So we want to address this head on, and we want to help you guys get out of the pattern if you're stuck there. And we're going to look at what does rocking the boat really mean, in addition to what I kind of highlighted as, the overview of it, but really how does this show up in all the different ways it shows up, and what you can do instead to break out of that so that you can realize it's not as scary as you think, and it's certainly worth it in the long run. So, what do you guys think? How do you see rocking the boat, and how does this come up for you in your work with clients?
The way that
Go right ahead.
You sure?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, positive.
So, what I heard you really just talking about there, Monika, was a whole lot of dysfunction, right? Like, it's really people getting caught up in bad patterns, and that's not rocking the boat in a positive way. We're talking about rocking the boat in a positive way. Dysfunctional arguing and rehashing and staying in bad pattern is not helpful. But what is helpful, and the kind of rocking the boat we're talking about today, is the kind of rocking the boat where you're being really bold in your marriage. And you're saying what you want, and you're saying how you want it, and you're letting your partner see you for really who you are. And you're coming from a place of honesty and openness and love, first and foremost. Letting your partner know everything. Like, when you're stressed out, when you're happy, when you're sad, when you want to change something up, when you want to solve a problem, when you're tired of being in the same rehashing pattern over and over again, and you really want to get to the other side of it and understand one another. Really being able to say all of it. And and also I wrote this down in my notes too, because I want to say this. Being bold is not the same thing as unbridled self-expression and just being a jerk, right? Saying things that are mean and cutting and abusive, right? You can always say what you need to say and be bold, coming from a place of loving firmness.
Yeah.
And that looks different depending on the dynamic of your relationship. And people need help around being bold in their marriage and saying what they need to say. But being bold is my definition of rocking the boat. Daring to say needs to be said.
Yeah. I love it so much because like how I was describing rocking the boat is how most people think of it. Like it is a dangerous thing to do and it is undesirable because the outcome will only be negative. But actually you have to frame that and look at that as not dangerous. It's actually something that is about being authentic. And that's what this whole group is for, right? Is learning how to be authentic and healthy. And that requires being bold. I think that there's an element of courage in that and recognizing that it doesn't have to lead to dysfunction. If I learn how to do it the right way, rocking the boat is going to lead to a positive resolution. It's going to help things be better. It's not going to just lead us into endless fighting with no resolve. That's part of the fear cycle. So I really like that reframe on that definition. It's
and I actually want
metaphor. When we think of rocking the boat, we literally think of like falling into sea, right? We rock the boat like a canoe or something.
Yeah.
There was a better metaphor for it that didn't sound so ominous.
Yeah. And I actually want to stack on what you said, Monika, because what I find when we talk about rocking the boat, historically, women have been in this place where a lot of them are afraid to speak up and say anything.
Yeah.
And the guys, are disconnected, usually emotionally anyway. And if you're quiet, they're good with it, but it's a horrible pattern that you begin to create, because if you don't vocalize a problem, if you don't say, I have an issue with this, and I don't mean, like Kelly said, unbridled self-expression. I mean, in a loving way.
Yeah.
And you just want to communicate how you feel about something. If you don't say anything, it can't be fixed. It can't be addressed. Okay. And it's really, you're doing your partner a disservice, when you do that, so I want people, the women who are in these spaces where they have a really hard problem, standing up and actually talking to their partners and vocalizing how they feel about a situation that's uncomfortable for them. I want them to understand that it's really important that they get to a place where they can communicate and talk effectively with their partner about these specific issues, because the men, a lot of times, they're not paying attention, and I mean, I've been there. I know this for a fact. And so if you don't say something, if you don't bring it up to to their attention, they will just think everything's hunky-dory and fine.
On the radar. You have to bring it onto the radar. But I think that there's such a fear, like, if I speak the problem, then I am the problem, or I'm creating the problem by speaking it. But it's already there, and it's already going to derail you. And speaking it is actually the opportunity to fix it.
Exactly.
It's not causing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I just want to make sure that I had to get that out there, because I know I talk to so many women who sat for years and have had issues around many things. But what happens, this is the other thing I want to say, it begins to lead to resentment, and something that could have been very small and maybe a small issue, you begin to make it a problem because you're not saying anything. And then it begins to show up. This issue begins to show up in other areas of your marriage, because it's at the root of what's really going on. But then you start to nitpick, because you don't feel like you can say anything. So you just try to you begin to try to find things that you can express yourself. It may be picking up the kids late. It might be you got the wrong thing with, you picked up the wrong thing from the grocery store. Babe, you know about that one? So and you take it out on your partner, and it's not this big thing, but it's not even the issue.
Right.
It's just this underlying, root issue that's going on that you're trying to find ways to just talk about it in a way and vocalize it, but you just don't have that courage,
Right. And that's such a good point, because I feel like a lot of times people will tell themselves that they're actually doing their spouse or the relationship a favor by not speaking up about something. Right. But then later when it comes up sideways, because there's resentment.
Yep.
It always comes out. Like, it's just, there is no way for that never to come out. So
exactly.
You're not actually doing anybody any favors by stuffing things. It might feel like an act of sacrifice for the greater good, but it isn't really helping the health of the relationship. And I think the reason I thought this was such an important topic is because I can't tell you how many times I talk to somebody where they're upset about something, and I'll say, did you say something? Did you mention, does he know you wanted that? Did you tell him? And she'll be like, well, no, but he should know. Or, why should I have to say something? And that's not fair either, I don't think. I think that, your action, what were you going to say, Kelly?
And so you teach people how to treat you. And this notion, this really romantic Hollywood notion that your partner's just supposed to know, look, there aren't that many like super conscious people that are just like, oh my God, let me just, know all of your needs psychically. I mean, no.
Well, it's almost like parenting that people want, that level of attunement. There's someone's like tuned into all of your nonverbal cues at all times. That's like,
no.
Yeah,
we just got a comment. We got someone who just wrote in, Diane Erie, and she said, what if you've said something multiple times?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Diane, can you give an example of what you've said multiple times to your partner? I would love to know so I can answer better.
But I think in a general way, if you're bringing up something several times, it would depend on how you're bringing it up. It would depend on, are you making a clear request? And then if somebody, and then are they saying yes to the request and then still not doing it? Then you have a case of a broken agreement, and then you have to come bring that up, and you have to say, hey, I brought this up. You agreed. This is what happened. Here's how I feel about it. What's going on? And then you have to talk about that.
She says more intimacy. Okay, so Diane, are you saying that you brought up to your partner several times that you want more intimacy, more sexual intimacy, more emotional intimacy? There are so many different kinds of intimacy. Which kind are you asking for specifically? Because I know that's a big one right there, with men and with women, where one partner, wants more intimacy than the other partner wants. And that is definitely the first casualty of not rocking the boat, not having an open, dripping, honest dialogue with your partner at all times. The first casualty is passion, is the connection. She says, yes, all of the above. So emotional intimacy, sexual intimacy. What do you think about that, Monika?
I think that's such that's complicated, because this could be an issue of, it might not be that you haven't communicated things in a bold manner or that you haven't been clear. It could be that there's blocks to intimacy. And so for that, it would be, good to like do a deeper dive and figure out, all right, what are the barriers to that? What is it? Is there fear? Is there resentment? Is there emotional disconnection? Is there anger? If it's not an issue of communication. So, because what we're really talking about is when people are not bringing up their truth. But if you're bringing up your truth and you're making a clear request and it's not forthcoming, then you have to look at why is that? And, have a very different kind of conversation. But it sounds like, Diane, you have been clear and you have perhaps rocked the boat. And so that's.
And what does your husband say when you let him know? How does he respond? You know, I would want to know what happens there.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you say it over and over again and you're just not getting the response, and then you go back and you have the deeper conversation. Okay, what's the problem? Like, what's going on inside of you? You know, and try to have a deeper conversation, and they're not able to have a conversation with you, I would say get a third party involved for sure, so that you guys can have that conversation.
Right.
Sometimes I know with Ned and I in the past, you know, there have been times where he's made requests, I've made requests, and, you know, there are requests that are made several times, and it's like, oh, well, I guess you just must not be hearing me. So you know what? I need to say it in a different way so you can hear me. And sometimes that just doesn't sound so nice. You know what I'm saying? But it comes from a place of firm love, you know, loving firmness. And we've done that with one another, you know, but you have to know how to do that.
Most marriages will have that where you're like, gosh, I've said it so many times. It's not always perfect. Like once I learn how to say it the right way, and once I'm bold, and once I rock the boat, then it will all work. This is just the first step. Then there's a whole other, you know, patterns that are coming up depending on your situation.
Yeah.
What I was thinking is so interesting about fear of rocking the boat. It sounds like a really specific fear, but I think it's actually a very broad category, because there's so many different reasons. There's so many different types of fear that lead to it. Like, and I would love to talk about this with you guys and see what you guys have found in terms of what's underneath that, right? Because what I've seen a lot, this is one thing that I noticed, is that people who are saying, well, I'm just so afraid to tell him that I feel that way, or I don't really feel comfortable telling her how that affected me. And I probe a little bit deeper. Sometimes it's fear of rejection, right? Sometimes it's fear of vulnerability, but a lot of times it's fear of like losing control. Like if I give them this information, then I'm giving them the power to do something with it. And what if they disappoint me? What if they don't respond in the right way? Or what if they don't give me what I'm asking? Or what if they don't even understand what I'm saying? And that will make me feel, that'll be so triggering for me.
Right.
When you're bold and you speak your truth, you are surrendering control of other people's perceptions of you. And you are having control, because then you're just like, all right, what's going to happen with that now? I have no idea what they're going to do with that. And that can be very scary.
But that's letting your partner see you. You know, that's vulnerability. And when you're married, vulnerability is a huge piece of, it's going to be crucial in its success, right? When you're connecting and communicating, because everything is energetic and energy is felt. And if your intention behind it really is coming from a place of love and wanting to figure this out, that will be felt also. And your partner may respond well and your partner may not respond well, but your job is to be authentic in your communication. Diane wrote back and she said, yes, we've talked about it. He says timing, he says stress, he says job is the reason, finances, he's turning 50. Babe, what do you think about that answer?
I think it's very common. You know, I think that's a very common answer for a lot of men when their wives are asking for more intimacy from them. I think it's something that, because a lot of men don't set that intention, we oftentimes lose focus in that way. It's one of the first things that that begins to drift in terms of, you know, how we communicate and how we connect with our wives a lot of times, unfortunately. And we oftentimes will use outside forces like, you know, our job, kids, financial issues, you know, things of that nature, where we should be talking about that with, you know, our you know, wives or our spouse. Oftentimes, because we're trying to hold it down, There may be some shame. A lot of times in those areas that begins to affect you in that way also.
Yeah.
Where, it affects how you can communicate because, it's discouraging a lot of times if you're a couple and you have, you're not feeling like you're being the man you should be to your wife or to your family, especially financially. That can be a huge burden for a lot of men, and it will affect you. A lot of times physically wanting to be intimately physical with your spouse. So I get it. I hear it a lot. It's very common.
I agree. And I think that, timing and job stress and finances is not the full picture. That's what I would say. That's just, those make it harder. But like Terry Real says, we don't have problems. We are problems.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's some melt going on. I would book a call, Diane, and see if we can do a deeper dive with you on understanding what else is going on, because that's probably not the whole picture.
Right.
And it's not necessarily because people don't speak the full picture because they're withholding information from you. It could also just because there's a lack of awareness around it, a lack of self-awareness around it, fear around what it really is or what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's things you can do about it.
Yeah.
But I think that speaking up and saying, hey, we can do better. Let's not settle for this is the smart thing to do. So that's good for you, Diane, that you have been raising the bar for yourself in that way.
Yeah. Right. And I would call all of those things that your husband throws out at you excuses. Mm-hmm. See, so when your husband comes back with all those excuses, then you come back from a place of loving firmness and you do exactly what Monika just said, which is, all those things you just said, like, I get it. However, I also feel like these are all excuses and we can do better than this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's not accept these limitations.
Yeah. These are all limitations that are made up in the mind. They're stories, they're narratives, and they're not the truth, because you can choose the opposite of all that is also the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. So, and I think that there's fear of, there's, how we were talking about that fear of like being transparent and vulnerable. There's also fear of judgment that comes from that, right? Or retaliation. What if we share something that could be used against us later?
Yeah.
That's if there's a really like sort of contempt.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Undertone, or if you're with somebody that uses retaliation as one of their losing strategies, that could be real fear.
Yeah.
What else do you guys think gets in the way? Like, what else are people truly afraid of when it comes to just speaking their truth and fighting for higher standards in the marriage?
I think a big one is a huge one that causes so many issues is a lot of people will not say anything because of fear of being misunderstood. The fear of being misunderstood is a huge one. It's what causes most issues in marriages because, when you're in a level of dysfunction in your dynamic around your communication, everything that comes out until you get a hold of this skill of communicating with one another, everything that comes out is going to be misunderstood, right? By each other. And so it creates these patterns and rehashings and constant perpetual arguments because of the fear of being misunderstood. Because it's like this person is looking for offense and this person is looking for offense, and each one's going to be on the defense. And it'll just start this fucking argument, right? Yeah. Again. And who wants that? So that's a big one. Yeah. And the fear of being misunderstood, the way you shift that is by, and this is what we teach people every day, is by learning to really listen to one another in a way that you're hearing one another and being able to speak to one another so that the other person can hear you. Mm-hmm. These are skills that have to be learned, or else you're never going to get to the other side of these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And plus, there has to be that emotional connection, before that too, so that you're in that mindset, that this person's on your team, And if they're on your team, you can hear them so much better. But it's interesting that you say there's this fear, when you say fear of being misunderstood, it struck me that I think people are, and maybe this is just human nature, equally afraid of being seen and not being seen. Because like you want to be seen, but then what if you put yourself out there and you're misunderstood? It's painful on an existential level.
Yeah.
And if you grew up in an invalidating environment, it's terrifying. Like the experience of saying something and not having it understood is going to be so painful that I won't even risk it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that can be such a deterrent, because we really that's why empathy is so important. We need to know that at least somebody's trying to understand. Maybe they won't understand, or maybe we're having a hard time articulating it, and so they don't understand yet. But if you keep at it, and if you can hold space for each other, you'll find a way to get to the truth of the situation.
Totally.
Yeah.
The fear of judgment, the fear of abandonment. A lot of women stay quiet because, they just don't want to lose their spouse. Like they're scared if I speak up, there's going to be judgment. There's going to be abandonment. He's going to leave me. That's a really big one. I know Ned has said too, from the male perspective, a lot of men won't say anything because number one, they don't know how. But number two, they don't want to hurt their partner's feelings.
Yeah, that's a big one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of guys, a lot of times, because we don't know how to, say things in a way that we feel like will be understood. Like back to what Kelly said. A lot of times, guys will just kind of hold it in and just hold it and just. Or they'll just find something else to do, or just try to avoid it altogether because it's just so difficult to put right. Kelly and I remember early on. She's very aggressive when she speaks. Sometimes she wants to know information, right? And I learned this early on because she would go through a slew of questions around a specific issue we were having. And she would ask me maybe 4 or 5 questions. And when I was getting ready to answer, she would continue to talk and continue to ask questions. And it got to a point where I just got to a place where I was just like, I'm going to go take a walk, because I don't know how to, right now, the way I'm feeling, I'm getting a little upset. And if I'm not going to say anything right now, I'm just going to shut up because if I say something, I'm afraid it's going to come out the wrong way.
Was it feeling of being flooded?
I want you to hear me, but there's that mix of emotion, because I feel like she's just really coming at me, and I'm also trying to hold space for her, but I'm also upset. Yeah, and I think a lot of times guys are in that same space. And we really don't know what to do. So the best thing we know, we try to figure out, we go, hey, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to talk. And it looks like, we don't want to have a conversation to a lot of women, because oftentimes she was just like, you're going to talk to me. You're going to talk to me. But after we would settle down, I would go, look, I just don't want to say anything because I'm really trying to gather my thoughts and say this in a way that you will hear me when I'm talking to you, and you will understand me because I know you want to be validated, and I know you want to be understood, but it works both ways.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to think I'm
ask them all the questions, ladies. You got to ask them all the questions, okay? All 50.
Yeah, just don't do it at one time. That's all. So
wait for one answer before you ask the next question.
Yeah.
I'll do that too. I'll ask 3 questions in a row, like rapid fire. And it's like, wait, then it can be overwhelming or flooding, especially if you're still trying to formulate and you have an answer, but you're trying to formulate. And being flooded, then you just have to you do have to take space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that's a great example too. Like, you don't want to hurt their feelings. How do I say this? In a way where it can be taken in a way that will feel constructive and not just drive more of a wedge between us.
Yeah. Because Because when Ned gets that way, right, when he's like, I got to go on a walk, he's triggered, right? Like I've triggered him, because I'm coming at him because I want answers and I want to have a conversation. And he's like, I can tell, you're in your place. And so he's triggered, so he takes a step back. But the point is you've got to rock the boat. You've got to go to your partner.
You have to risk the discomfort at times. It's just not always going to go perfectly. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and you have to persist. You have to persist.
Right. And I will say that sometimes persisting means, you bring it up, it doesn't go well, you bring it up again the next day, and it doesn't go well, you bring it up the next day. You don't just take no for an answer. You come at it another way, and you think about, all right, that didn't work. How can I approach this again? Usually, if you approach something from your vision, I'm bringing this up because I'm imagining us having a really great connection. My life dream is to be having really great experiences with you and to be able to talk about our hopes and dreams and our fears together and feel like we're on the same team. So within that spirit, I wanted to bring this up to you. How can we, when you do it as an invitation, you frame it like, here's your vision. And then you invite them into it from the big picture of why you're bringing it up, setting your intention. Usually that will be better received. It takes a little bit it takes self-awareness. It takes the ability to have that you have to set it up right. And you also have to know that timing is important. Consent in the conversation is important. So if you're scared about rocking the boat, it might be that you've had bad experiences because you have perhaps unconsciously set it up so that it wouldn't even succeed in the first place, so that then you could say, see, nothing works. Nobody listens to me. Yeah. But if you are really methodical about it and you come at it from a very conscious place, most of the time, unless you're dealing with somebody who's, pathological or, extreme narcissist, usually if you come at it with from a conscious intention, it's going to go well. Usually it'll go well. If you're with somebody who loves you, that'll open up the door to at least entering that territory together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can definitely testify to that because, over the years, Kelly's learned how to bring up questions or, any specific problem in a very calm manner. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I want to do is engage her. That's all it makes me want to do is talk to her, when she comes at me that way. So, it's definitely, it changes the dynamic tremendously when you learn like you said, the right approach.
How to set it up.
And the right frame.
Yeah. I had to practice that. I would set it up to fail because I didn't really think it would work. And I would just create the situation that would confirm my fears.
Right.
And when I realized I was doing it and I started to try to set it up for success, as it was difficult because the pull and the intensity of wanting to do it right when I felt like I wanted to do it was really strong. And it was hard for me to learn to lay the groundwork. And then it got over time. But it's worth it. It's worth it. So a lot of this there's a lot of things that we talk about requires a lot of self-awareness and being able to kind of look inward and say, what's stopping me? What can I do to set this up in the best possible way?
Yeah. And I can tell you, I just want to say this very quickly. Yeah. It takes some time and it takes some, you have to learn how to do this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I just want people to be aware of that. This is not something I didn't learn how to do this quickly. It takes a lot of patience. And sometimes it takes some help, from other people showing you and sharing, with you information. Mm-hmm. And I just want to make sure people understand that trying to do this on your own, a lot of people, that's the fool's route sometimes, and I encourage people to try to, if you're having issues like that, really try to find other ways and talk, if you can talk to someone, get on the phone with someone, and talk about these issues.
And if there's a good chance, because this is what I hear all the time, there's a good chance that if both people in the relationship just don't feel felt by one another, if both people just feel like, he doesn't get me, she doesn't get me. We're just two different people. We just want different things. Maybe we've just grown apart and, we just don't get each other. If you're feeling that you don't get each other, then neither one of you, then you're missing the boat somewhere. And neither one of you are being authentic with each other, or maybe one of you aren't being real. But if you're not feeling felt by one another and you're not feeling understood by one another, then it is 100% likely that neither one of you are rocking the boat in your marriage. Neither one of you are really being bold, okay, to the extent that you need to be, right?
Yes. And if you're not, that's why people get to the point of saying we just grew apart. The only way you're going to grow apart is if you're not being authentic and you don't know each other anymore because you're not speaking up.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
you're not even connected with each other or know the inner world of the other person. So of course you're going to grow apart. So that's one of the drawbacks of you think you're making things better by not rocking the boat, but it actually creates more dangerous territory and it opens up the way to growing apart. It opens up the way to infidelity. It opens up the way to just deep and like ongoing loneliness of feeling like you're in this marriage, but it's not really a true partnership outside of perhaps logistics or economic arrangement.
Yeah, and that's so sad. That's not the way it should be, and it doesn't have to be that way, And an authentic marriage is like what Terry Real always says. It's a constant cycle of harmony, disharmony, and repair. And there's a process to that. And the first step in the process is rocking the boat.
Yep. Yeah. That, and I love that concept of intimacy is actually built on the repair work.
Yes.
That's fierce intimacy. I love that concept. It's not just all harmony all the time. You're not going to have real intimacy. That's why being bold is so important. When you rock the boat, when you create a little bit of disharmony, you disrupt the equilibrium by speaking up and raising the bar and saying, I want to do better. Like, you initiate change. That's the only way. Well, it might cause temporary, disrepair. But then through talking about it and speaking your truth and with the skills, if you got the right skills, you're going to be able to repair and know each other better at the end of that conversation. You feel like, I'm so glad we talked about that.
And you're so much closer. At the end of it, you just want to have sex.
Right. That's a nice side effect too. But I think that feeling of where you're like, God, I'm so glad we talked.
Yes.
I'm so glad we talked about it. I feel so much better now. I feel so much closer to you and you're all feeling in love again. That's that closeness that you can have when you do rock the boat.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how to do that, right? I mean, obviously there's a lot of layers to this, but I really think that the first step in doing this is realizing that not speaking up is always going to make things worse. Maybe temporarily it will avoid a little discomfort, but it is not making things better. You're not doing anybody any favors. And that is that sort of like cognitive distortion that you have to break out of because it's just not true. And you have to know that making the choice to be bold is what is going to make things different. If you don't like where you're at, if there's stuff that's bugging you, the only way to make it better is to do something different and to speak up about it and to set your intention for what you're trying to create differently. If that rocks the boat, well, that's just part of the process. Thing. So the recognition of that, I think, is the most important thing. I think that raises a lot of limiting beliefs that we have when we start to think about, okay, all right, like if you're listening now and you're like, yes, I got to do this, I'm going to speak up. What you'll probably find is there might be some, emotional barriers that can crop up. Like people get terrified. I have a couple clients right now. They're just like terrified, like as if their life is, it feels like irrationally terrifying. You probably have some limiting beliefs around speaking up. When were you shamed for speaking your truth? When were you hit for speaking your truth? When were you neglected? And there could be some trauma that you don't even remember around that. And so on some level, you've got some conditioning that has to be reconditioned, so you
Right.
start to really internalize the belief that I'm actually safer. My marriage is safer if I speak up.
Right.
Not the other way around.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's
Yeah.
cultural conditioning too. You know, women culturally for a very long time, you know, being taught to be the good girl, be the quiet girl, shut up. You don't need to have so many opinions, be quiet, keep yourself small, and just don't speak your truth. It's not ladylike to do that. You know, it's really bitchy for you to complain.
Yeah, like loud, bitchy. What are some other adjectives that are used to describe somebody who's like assertive as a woman?
You know, you must be, you know, you're masculine, or, you know, whatever, all that BS, the stereotypical stuff. But, and then with men, right? Like men were taught, you know, don't connect with your emotions. Don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. Men don't talk about feelings and emotions. And you need to disconnect yourself, right? So culturally, both men and women have messages that do not serve men and women intimacy to connect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Because the culture doesn't really support what we're saying. Like what we're saying to do is not easy because most of us are not conditioned to do that.
Right.
And so it really is nothing less than unlearning what you've learned, you know, stripping bare the truth for yourself and shining the light in places you may never have looked before, and learning a bunch of, you know, mastering new tools and skills. But that's all doable as long as you know that that's what you want to do and you get the concept of it and you recognize the greater good. Then you set your intention. It starts with simple, you know, setting your intention and taking that risk.
Yes.
Because you really don't have
Takes courage.
You really don't.
It takes courage. Yeah.
And this is a great lesson to take with you in every area of your life. It's something that I've, you know, been really grabbing hold of for years in my own mindset work, things that I, you know, try to, you know, grill into my brain. But it can be really anxiety inducing and stressful for people, especially women, to bring things up and to rock the boat and to be bold. It can cause people to go into these places that don't feel good to them, so they get scared and then they'll stop. And so that's in all areas, and stress is part of life. And so wishing for less stress is the wrong thing to be wanting. It's and the wrong thing to be wishing for, to have less stress, because stress is going to be part of parenting, stress is going to be part of marriage, stress is going to be part of work. The question to ask yourself is, who do I want to be in those moments that are so stressful? How can I show up differently and respond in those moments? How can I react in a way that's going to make the situation better and not exacerbate it and make it worse? So when you feel the stress coming on and you feel yourself sort of going to this place of anxiety, it's such a good thing to ground yourself and to remember that, you know, stress is part of it. And the only way to grow and to get to the other side of anything is to be bold and do it anyway, even when it feels uncomfortable.
Yes, yes. Amen. And part of that is recognizing too that there might be a backlash. If you haven't done this before, or it's not something that you're used to doing, and then you start doing it, you might have a backlash of feeling guilt, of second guessing yourself, of getting really depressed, of feeling like, oh my God, did I do the right thing? That's part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Know that that's part of it, and don't let that derail you, because it literally is just a backlash of your programming saying, wait a minute, you're not supposed to do that. And so your psyche will make you feel uncomfortable about the fact that you just did that.
Totally.
So you got to wait for that to pass. Don't, give yourself like 24, 48 hours to come out of that. And come to the group and post in here to talk to us. And we can try to support you in that. Also, if you feel like you get some support around, do a deeper dive into your relationship and look at some of the other things that are getting in the way of this for you, you can book a call. We invite you to do that at monikahoyt.com/talk. And then we'll just look at what are the dynamics, what's been holding you back, what are the specific fears, what are the patterns, and then what would it take? What would that look like? What would the actual steps be to be able to break out of that pattern, depending on what your goals are? So to you go into the right direction. If we can help you, we'll let you know that. And if we can't help you, we'll let you know that as well. But our goal really is to raise the bar on marriages and make sure that people aren't settling, and make sure that people are not procrastinating, and make sure that fears are not what are guiding you in your relationship. If you let your fears guide you will not end up with what it is that you deeply desire. And you have an opportunity every day to create what you desire. So that's what we're here for. Let us know how we can support you. If you guys have any comments or questions about this talk, for those of you that are not on live and you're listening later, go ahead. We will go back through and answer any questions that you might have. Do you have anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I see that Becky Dowdle is on. She said, haha, that's me. You need to be the good girl. It's disrespectful to talk to your husband that way. Hey, Becky. Yeah, girl.
You on here?
Any of those old programs, you got programmed with, girl.
And there's a way to do it respectfully. Like, you can be bold without being disrespectful. So, and that's, sometimes you have to really carefully craft how you're going to do it.
But here's the thing too, being bold is not being disrespectful, right? Mm-hmm. Being bold
that is in and of itself,
not being disrespectful.
No.
The only last thing I was going to say is, look, a lot of people need to hear this message. There are a lot of people out in the world who feel like they are the only ones who are having issues in their marriage, and they're not, okay? Mm-hmm. And so if you know someone who needs to hear this message, like it and share it so that people know, who need to know that they're not alone, and that there are answers and there are solutions, no matter how many psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, counselors' offices you've been to that have failed you. We work with people every day who've been in these situations, who are now working through the issues in their marriage and getting to the other side of some really hard years and times that they've seen. So like this message, share it if it has served you, because this is our passion. This is what we do.
Actually, thank you for saying that, but I just thought of something, which is that I think, on this page, yes, like and share on this page. I was thinking our group is private, and so then if you like or if you share, nobody outside the group will be able to see it. But because we're actually hosting this on the page, that's actually not the case. So yes, like and share, or tag people that you think could.
Tag people too. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks, Ned and Kelly, for joining me again today. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks for the invite.
Have a wonderful weekend. We'll catch you next week.
You too.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.